biggest disability you can have is a bad mindset.
Thanks again, Nick, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us and talk about your journey as a speaker. Now, you didn't set out to become a speaker. How did you get roped into this? How did you end up on stage for the very first time?
Of course, yeah. I think if I look back, even when I was very, very young, I didn't know how I was going to be independent. I didn't know how I was going to provide for myself financially. And my dad, who's weirdly always right, he was like, "You could be a sports announcer, you could be a speaker." And I'm like, at that time, 16 years old, I'm like, "Dad, I hate people and I don't want to talk to people and I don't want to do anything like that." And so that seed was planted, I guess, very early on. But the way that I found myself into becoming a speaker, or at least going on stage for the first time, actually, if I think about it, it was roughly when I was 18 or 19 years old, when my teachers wanted me to go speak for another school. And at that time, I was a wrestler. At that time, I was also on this app called Vine, where you could post 6-second videos, and I was known as like this famous prankster. But what the human side, what the human saw, was the fact that there was a guy with no legs but an arm who was creating entertainment style videos that was inspiring other people, and maybe he could share that message to other students. So actually my first stage wasn't a big stage. My first stage was an auditorium of maybe 30 to 40 kids. And I think that's an even harder stage than adults. Even being an adult now, I think the harder stages are going to speak to kids versus adults. But I kind of just got thrown into it because, yeah, from the outside, they saw a vessel that was unique, a vessel with no legs of an arm, who had a message, maybe an inspirational message to give to students. And for me, I just thought I was Nick. I had no idea what I was talking about. I was going to share my story. So some of my first stages were actually just auditoriums full of kids until we actually got into like a more professional setting.
Now, I'm assuming that you would have spoken in school like all of us, give your class speeches and go through that process, and that would have prompted teachers to look and say, hey, actually, let's see how you would do it in another school.
Yeah, I don't think no, that wasn't the case for me. I hated school. I was the one that would raise his hand last, and I would isolate. I even at the ending years of my high school career, I barely got by. I was more focused on wrestling and sports, and so I was not a good student, I would say. And so for those that are listening, make sure that you are a good student as you become an adult. But yeah, I was very isolated, and I think I went from an isolated kid to like a million followers my last year of high school. So I was like, even just to give perspective, my last year of high school, I was, bro, I was a nerd. I was isolated. Didn't really fit in, and so I went from nobody knowing who I was to a million followers in my small town, and I was still eating lunch alone at my table in as a high schooler. So no, it wasn't a traditional path. And then I think that's when I transitioned into the professional setting. And the way that I got transitioned into the professional setting was I actually moved from New Jersey to Florida to become a bodybuilder. And one of my mutual friends was like, "Hey, I'm having a few entrepreneurs over at my house. I know you're new to Tampa. Let's meet some people." And so I go to this little room, this mastermind, and there was everybody sharing their story and their business plan. And I'm like, I have no idea what entrepreneurship is. I have no idea what business is. And after I shared my story, there was a man to the left of me that I've never met in my life before. And he was like, "You could be on stage with the greatest people in the world and change lives." And I'm like, "Dude, who are you? First, who are you? And what are you talking about?" And we got to talking, and he's like, "I don't know. I have a download. I see you on stage with the biggest people in the world, and I will work for you for free. And if one day we land some stages and you like the work we do, maybe one day we'll start a company together." And that was a gentleman named of Ratmir, and he worked for me for free for a very long time. And that's when he pushed me onto my first real stage. And what's so interesting is we still have an inside joke to this day. I'll be backstage at some of the biggest stages in the world, and I'll be like, "Hey, Ratmir, like, you got any advice?" And he'll be like, "Just share your story, bro," because I had literally no idea what I was doing. And I think people, when it comes to speaking, they think they get to skip this season of feeling like an imposter, and they get to skip the season of not knowing what they're doing. And I literally imagine practicing your first speeches in front of real live audiences that were important audiences. Like, I mean, that's what I was doing. Like my psychological framework to speaking was, I'm going to take them chronologically through my life. Here, I was born, and then I was in middle school, and then I was in high school, and now I'm a bodybuilder. Now I'm here. If I can do it, you can do it. Literally, that was my keynote. And so, yeah, I was willing to suck long enough to be great at something, but also I was thrown out onto stage to practice real time in front of like really important crowds.
You're talking about your being in high school and having 1 million followers and still eating lunch alone. Did you feel like everything was just surreal? You were living in a fantasy at that point?
I felt that I experienced very early on that people like you when you have things. People one day will like you, and people the next day won't like you. Or people one day won't like you, and the next day you have followers and people want to be around you. And I think I picked up on that very early on. And so, like, if you weren't friendly or you weren't friends with me or within my circle when I was a nobody and I was a nerd, why would I start eating lunch and mingling and hanging out with kids who now want to be a part of my life because I have some sort of status? And so I feel like I experienced that very early on. And instead of like opening up and connecting and wanting to be around those people, it was more of like, no, you weren't in my life in the beginning. I'm going to stay isolated. I'm just going to keep being lonely Nick with millions of followers.
And if we look at people who are watching this now and thinking, that's you're so lucky. Now it's interesting because of your condition of having one arm and no legs. And you think about, like, people look at you and go like, oh, you're so lucky. You had 1 million followers in high school. And what's the response to people who come with these, I would say, prerequisites or even excuses that say like, I would also do it if I had 1 million followers.
Yeah, well, you don't. That's the first thing. And one of the reasons why you don't is because you're not willing to put yourself out there and get scrutinized. And so let's back up here and unpack this thing. One of the first limiting beliefs that comes up when people see me is like, oh, well, I would have followers if I look like you as well. And the reframe behind that is none of you relate to having no legs of an arm. So how am I relatable? All of you listening right now, my hallucination is the majority of you listening have all your arms and all your legs. And so I'm the least relatable person to be sharing a message. Now, that's when it comes to the nuances and the strategy and the mastery of making my story your story. And I'm with the right psychological frameworks and keynote frameworks, I'm able to make my story, which isn't relatable to you. But if you look at it from 30,000 feet in the air, nobody relates to having no legs of an arm. And so what that means is that your ordinary story is actually extraordinary because it connects with ordinary people just like you. You are way more relatable than I am. You're just not out there. I'm just out there. The other thing is, yeah, luck, yeah, I guess. But also, I mean, right now I have over 5 million followers. What are the chances someone's saying something really disgusting about me right now? 100%. And so I've sacrificed my life to be scrutinized and to be metaphorically crucified on the internet to impact you. So lucky me. And the truth is that I was born in a vessel where I'm not allowed to hide. You get to hide if you want. I'm not allowed to hide. I can try to hide, but everywhere I go, everywhere in the world, people look at me, people stare at me, people say something about me. I'm not allowed to hide. And so I've just been pushed into this thing. Now, the blessing for you is you have the choice whether you want to hide or whether you want to go out there. Now, what I would highly suggest is the path of being out there is way more fulfilling than hiding. And even if I had the ability to hide, I think I'd probably get bored and say, wow, I'm not serving, I'm not contributing to the world, I'm not being an offering, and I'd probably go back out into the world. And so for those that saying lucky, yeah, lucky is the willingness to put yourself out there day in and day night and day in and day out until someone picks up on your video and someone sees you. And that's the way that I also view speaking, the way that I view content. It's like the lottery. But the only reason why I got lucky is I was willing to submit a lottery ticket multiple times a day, every single day, until someone noticed me.
Most humans would post something and they could have 99 positive comments, but they'll have one negative one, and they'll go zone in directly into that. And I say most humans, I'm not talking about myself, because I could have 99 great things said about me while speaking, but one person would say something and I'll immediately go towards that. I'm sure you face that and much more. What are the tools and techniques that you use and the practices that you use that you don't allow yourself to get sucked into that vacuum of people that border on the offensive and rude and, almost as like, and hide behind I'm just making a joke?
Of course. So this will hurt a lot of people and it'll break their brain a little bit, but when you post content and then you hyper focus on the one person that is saying something nasty to you, now you have to take ownership and realize that strangers have the keys to your nervous system. And the reason why strangers have the keys to your nervous system is because if something like that really affects you deeply, that means that you're performing for praise and you're not just truly authentically expressing. And so let's back. I went through this as well. I'm currently struggling and overcoming this. So let me not preach like I'm perfect. I'm preaching from a place of struggle, in the sense that Nick got praised for everything. Nick got praised for getting on a chair. Nick got praised for dressing himself. And very early on, Nick liked the feeling of praise. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the feeling of praise, but what we don't realize is oftentimes we're doing things to get that feeling. And so if Nick loves praise so much, what happens when they like my speech and the next day they don't like my speech? The day that they don't like my speech, then I go and say, oh, maybe there's something wrong with me. How dare them? I want to isolate. Now I feel shame. And then I stop posting content because they make me feel not so good. And essentially other strangers have the keys to my nervous system. And so in the most polite way, if you're not careful, praise is poison. And the very reason why praise is poison is because if you're always doing things for external praise, the moment they don't like you, your whole nervous system is going to be crumbled. And so a few strategies for people. The first thing is praise yourself, in the sense that give yourself love, give yourself joy, give yourself compliments. I mentioned this the other day. I'm 29 years old, and it took me 29 years to look at myself in my face and say, wow, you've done a pretty good job with no legs and one arm. Never in my life have I gave Nick credit for doing all the things that he did with no legs, one arm. So for those that are listening, the first advice to you is maybe this is the season you start to become friends with you, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is one of the most powerful psychological frames that helps any of my students, whether they're mindset students or speaking students, is inside of your brain, essentially you have two identities. You have a lot of voices. Some of you have way too many voices, but let's just put two, for example. You have the judge, right? And the judge is very aggressive. The judge is like, don't post that content, it's stupid. Your hair looks messed up. No one's going to like that video. Wow, you didn't get any likes. You should probably remove it. Everybody knows that voice that stops them from doing the very thing or destroys them after they do the thing. So that's the judge. So now we're aware of the judge. But what I would invite those that are listening right now is into the identity and into the internal dialogue of what we call the scientist. And what the scientist does is the scientist chalks everything up as an experience, as an experiment. A scientist doesn't try to do an experiment, and if it blows up, they don't go, oh, I'm a terrible scientist, I should probably throw out my degree. No, they go, oh, I probably won't use those chemicals again. And so it even makes you, look, you're smiling, it even makes you feel differently, the psychological frame of a scientist. And what's so important about a scientist is that a scientist doesn't allow the data to dictate their value as a human or a speaker or a content creator. That will change the quality of your life. And so the next time you're speaking, the next time you're creating, the next time you're posting, the meaning you give it is, I'm just going to experiment. And guess what? If this video doesn't work, I ain't going to do that one again. I'm going to try some different chemicals. And so what would life look like if you viewed content creation and speaking and keynotes as an experiment versus life or death? your whole life would change.
That's extremely insightful. I love that analogy of the judge and the scientist. But then again, people still come back and go, "Oh, I've got to have the right equipment. I've got to have the right microphone. I've got to have the right camera." Why are people stuck into this prerequisite thing where they're waiting to be ordained in order for them to move forward and to actually open their mouth and share a message?
Yeah, it's their way to rationalize their lack of execution. It's just a pattern. So, by the way, when I say this in a loving way. It's just a way that you rationalize your lack of execution. It's a good story that you make up of why you can't post. But also, procrastinating is the perfectionist way to feel successful. Let me say that again. Procrastinating is the perfectionist way to feel successful, because they're always, once I get the equipment and then once I get the DJI mic, and then once the lighting outside is the perfect way, then I'll pull out the camera. And that's just your way of feeling successful and waiting for the perfect time when the perfect time never comes. But now you're screwed. Now you can't use that excuse, because if you look at some of the greatest up and coming creators, they're sitting in their car talking to a phone. They don't even have a mic. And what's really beautiful about this, and actually gives us permission to express more, is now we're moving to an age where people want just authenticity. They want the messy background. Like, I almost did this interview from my bed, but I was like, let me move to the couch. But we're literally moving towards people. They don't want AI, in the sense of they don't want AI videos. They don't want professional talking head videos with you in a studio. They literally want you pulling up. They just want to feel like you're talking to a best friend on FaceTime. And so now there's really no excuse. Now you kind of look silly if all your content is just talking head videos and they're perfect lighting. Now you kind of look silly when you have the perfect microphone. They're like, you're too polished. And so I would say authenticity is the new content strategy of 2026. It's not the hooks and the stories and the closing. It's like you getting the download, and how fast can you take the download of when you're really excited about an idea, and how fast can you hit post. That's the new content. That's the new content strategy.
Now, that's wonderful. So, and I've actually seen reels of you, like you just gotten up in the morning, and your hair is all messy, and you just start going on your video, and they've done extremely well. So, for people who look at that and go, "That's wonderful," but how do I monetize it? Like, you've got all these followers. What happens if social media just shuts down and all those followers disappear? Firstly, so what happens if you lose all your followers? And also, well, before we actually answer that question, how do you actually monetize the message that you're putting out there?
Of course. Well, first I'll say if all of social media shuts down, all of our mental health will improve. So there'll be massive blessings and gifts in that. But let's say that doesn't happen. I would say
we never know what happened to Punch with social media.
Yeah, we never know. Exactly. Exactly. Great example. And so what I would say is this is where a lot of speakers. This is the gap, right? And the gap is, you can speak for free. You can speak for a keynote fee. If you're not really famous, your keynote fee is not going to be crazy. But the two highest levels of speaking are speaking to give away something for free, and then speaking to give away a paid offer, or to invite people to go deeper on a paid offer, right? So, for example, let's break this down. As a speaker and as a content creator, as you're moving into this industry, there's a few questions that I would ask myself that would lead you to being able to give away some sort of digital asset that people would pay for. At the core of it, the info age of selling info is not going away. It's only getting bigger. Non-traditional education, people learning from coaches and experts and teachers, whatever it may be, that's not going anywhere. And if you think about it, we just sell passwords for a living. But we sell passwords to really valuable data and really valuable strategies. So I would ask myself, as I'm moving into becoming a speaker and marketer, whatever that is where can I collapse time for other people? Based on my current identity and my current skill set, and my current strengths, where can I collapse time for other people? Because if I can collapse time for people, people pay for speed. So by the way, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just getting the brain going and saying, okay, where in my life, where are my strengths? Can I collapse time for other people? For me, I can collapse time in helping you upgrade your operating system. People come to me for mindset. I can also I can help people create the most amazing keynotes. I can help people create the most amazing offers because I've already done it, right? So where in your life can you collapse time for other people? Now, if the brain goes, well, I can't collapse time for other people, the second question would be, what skill set am I going to acquire so I can collapse time for other people? Because if you can't collapse time for other people, no one's going to pay to go further faster with you. So where can you collapse time for other people, or what skill set am I dedicated to acquiring so then I can collapse time for other people? Your challenges and your traumas and your tribulations that you've healed is now the blueprint for other people. What if you didn't go through all the suffering? What if you didn't go through all the challenges? What if you didn't go through all the ups and downs for nothing, but you actually went through it? So once you healed it, once you've overcome it, you can package it as a blueprint and sell it to people. Because I don't know about you, but if I found someone who is suffering like I did, and I could just pay to not suffer as much, I would pay a lot of money to not suffer as much. If I had a toothache and you were my dentist, I would gladly pay you to get rid of the pain so I don't have to suffer as much, right? So that's what I would start asking myself is, how can I acquire a skill set so I can collapse time for other people? And then you can put that into a product. You can put that into a course. You can put that into a group coaching model. You can coach people one-on-one. You can give the first lesson of your course for free, and you can give that out on stage or on a podcast. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But every single person listening wants to create some sort of digital asset. So when they go into a podcast or when they go into a stage, they can give away that as a gift. And then in exchange, those people capture their emails and their phone numbers. So now if social media goes down, at least you own your data and you own your people.
And with the progression, you talked about being paid as a speaker and giving out free digital assets and so on. There's a lot of gatekeeping in this industry. You know, a lot of speakers are protected by teams that don't allow them. Like, we've had this in the past. Like, we run these summits, we've had hundreds of thousands of people come on, and we reach out to the team makes a decision. And then like a year later, a few months later, we actually meet the speaker, and they're like, I didn't even know this came across my desk. Why are we not doing any work together? So how did you go from speaking in an auditorium to 30 people? How did you end up on stage with one of the greatest speakers, Tony Robbins? How do you make that transition?
It's a good question. I think first thing, going back to team, is, as you guys know, my team's small and sometimes we're way messy. You're like, yo, where you at? And it's like, yo, my team is so small that sometimes we just miss things. And it's not even us like intentionally like backstage, like, oh, we're going to mess things up. It's like, yo, it's like me, my boy, and some bubble gum and shoestring. So that's the first thing. I think I have an advantage and a disadvantage that my team is very small. So we're involved in everything, but also and it's even weird for me to say this, I've built a really big personal brand, and I don't give myself enough credit, but I built a really big personal brand in the sense that when you have a big personal brand, it opens doors. You can get in places that most people can't get into. You can get on stages that most people can't get onto because you're providing so much value with the amount of eyeballs that you bring to said event, right? And so I think it's a combination of personal brand, but also the greatest people in the world respect persistence. And we were so persistent with Tony until it was probably like just a fly in the wall that they were ready to smack. And they were like, yo, let's just gamble and give this guy a chance. And then if you're persistent and you finally get a chance, you better do a damn good job, And so I would say it's a combination of building a personal brand, but also my team was blowing up Tony's team for 2-3 years until they gave us a shot. And our first shot was, they were like, we can't pay you, we can't fly you out, we can't pay for your hotel room. And a lot of people would be like, screw that. And I almost said, screw that. But it was like, for the cause, for the foundation, for the long game. And then we did it, and I was able to perform. And because I was able to perform, they were like, who the heck is this guy? And then that led to more doors. And so don't be persistent if you're not ready to perform.
That's wonderful.
That's a good quote. I've never said that, so I'm gonna go write that down, and I'm gonna have a team write down. But don't be persistent if you're not ready to perform. And going back to you, my friend, to your earliest question, is it luck? Yeah, it's the right place at the right time, and me being able to say the right words that move the crowd. And so it's a little bit of everything. I believe success is also luck too. It is like you built yourself into the specific character. You have the right skill set. The right opportunity comes, and you're able to perform at that right opportunity. So there is a bit of luck, right? If we go back to the people that, some of the OGs in the space, there was a time where Facebook was their algorithm was just blasting to certain people. They gained millions of followers. I wasn't around during that time, so is that luck? Could be.
If you had to take away all the followers, take away any connection to people like Tony Robbins and Myron Golden and all these incredible speakers, and it was just you, and you took away Ratmir as well, and he's such an incredible human being as well. You take away all those people, and you are here today, just Nick, and you said, I want to be a speaker. Everything's taken away from you. What would be the first 3 things that you do? What would be your 3 major moves?
I think the first move would be, what am I going to become a well of knowledge in? So I'd identify that pocket of knowledge that I'm going to become an expert in, because it's easier to talk about something and it's easier to talk about something that you've mastered. So one, I would pick okay, what is that well of knowledge I'm going to dive in? Is it fitness? Is it mindset? Is it e-commerce? Is it trading? What is it going to be for me that I'm going to just go tunnel vision on that thing? So one, I would pick my well of knowledge. 2, I would start creating a story bank. So I would list all of the stories in my life that could teach something, and I would ask myself, how can I tie these stories into what I'm teaching? How can I tie these stories into trading? How can I tie these stories into e-commerce? How can I tie these stories into mindset or fitness, whatever I'm teaching? So I create a story bank, because then if I have a story bank, I'm equipped to go on podcasts and interviews and speak eloquently and change lives with stories. 3rd, I would work on my offer. Of course, I would create an irresistible offer. What is that offer? Is it going to be one-on-one coaching? Is it going to be a course? Is it going to be a mastermind? Is it going to be group coaching? Is it going to be a PDF? I would just create something that is of value. And then 4th, are we on 4?
We're also 3, but let's go 5.
Okay. Am I on 3 or 4?
You're moving into 4th now.
Okay, 4th would be dedicate. Even I need to do this. I would dedicate to never missing a day of posting. So I would create a piece of content and I would post it on your 2 to 3 main platforms: Instagram, YouTube. You can pick them. I would highly suggest Instagram, and then any others. So I would dedicate myself to never missing a post. And then 5th, fifth would be in a transition to 4th is make your free stuff really, really good, so they want to pay for your pay stuff.
All right. Wow. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Saj. These interviews